And it's not again.
This is 3 years ago. One story, makes New York look conservative.
Exactly. Business That's for small businesses. Having
And they have offshore and all these oil rigs. It's not tax.
Of course. Isn't true. And that's what everything.
Fish.
Exactly. You gotta feed fish.
SAT word.
Yeah. All right. That's why we're not there. I understand Florida. I understand how these things.
Okay. We started the Maimra on Hargoshas or on Hargoshas Hashem. Ech lahargish, ech zoichem lahargish Hashem is before you enter the page Reish Samach Vav. So the Tzaddik is talking about the development, how to develop, open up within one's heart. Hargosha, because a feeling of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So Reish Samach Vav, beginning of the page, Aleph la'akir b'metzias ha'pnimis v'chashivusa. Shlav Aleph, lahavik ladas ki kol in yimascha b'seichel. Tchila tzarech ladas. First, a person has to know sheyesh efsharos lahargish Hashem that it's possible to feel Hashem Baruch. Sheyesh efsharos lahargish Hashem Baruch. It sounds like it's something which is so obvious, but it's not really, wasn't really part of the conversation when we were growing up. There were maybe some psukim that we heard that sounded like this, or drushes that maybe implied that it's possible for a person to have a hargosha elikus, a feeling of elikus, connection in such a way, but it wasn't really ever explained or developed. So a person has to know that it's possible. And to recognize that there is, beyond what we see with our eyes, there's an or pnimi in this world that one can feel. And that when a person is able to feel elokus, even if it's just a little bit. There's an unbelievable tanug. That's the Lisanag Hashem that the Ramchal speaks about at the beginning of his Sharm, which is our whole being here in this world. Agam lahamid shekol Yehudi yochel is chaver l'Hashem yisbarach, and you should never ever think of yourself as being excluded from that. Meaning that because of certain things in your life that you've thought or said or done and so on, that you're excluded from that world of being able to have a hargosha of Hashem. L'hargish also, l'liskos l'hashras oro, to be zeicher l'hashras oro, to feel that or of Hashem. That's Aleph. The gam shenis l'havin shekor ha'hargasha tofes mokom ikari ma'od b'avos Hashem yisbarach. And to understand, and this comes with learning a little bit here in the Sfar HaKadoshim, to understand that this koach that a Jew has to feel Elokus is a very, very big part of Avodas Hashem. It's not something like an extra thing, a nice thing. It's a very big part. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants our hearts. He wants us to feel that connection. He's a Father who loves us. And Hashem is waiting that we should serve Him, and we should connect to Him also in a way of kirva, of closeness. All of Yiddishkeit, all Torah mitzvahs, tachlisam lahavi es adam lahargish be'emes es metzias Hashem yisbarach. All tachlis of Torah mitzvahs is to bring a person to feel be'emes, this metzias of Hashem. Rakim hakara v'hargasha havodihi avodah mesukenes. And not only is this not something which is extra, or something which is like a hither, or only for tzaddikim, but this is really a basic requirement in order that one's avodas Hashem be mesukenes, be the way that it's supposed to be. Beis. So Aleph is to think about this and to understand it and to learn this and to realize this. We spoke about a lot about this over the years, but we were learning Sefer Mitzvahs and the Chabur of Sefer Mitzvahs, and we did the mitzvah of Ahavas Hashem. The mitzvah of Ahavas Hashem, what does that mean? Ahavas Hashem. And the mitzvah of Hubai Sidbak, of Dveikus B'Hashem, Ahavas Hashem, Dveikus B'Hashem. So again, what we were usually taught was that Ahavas Hashem means loving the Torah, and Dveikus B'Hashem means to be Dovek B'Tamid Chachamim, and all of that, of course, is true. But those were never meant as replacements or substitutes for the simple pshat of what it means, Ahavas Hashem and Dveikus B'Hashem. So Shlav Beis, Kasha Odom Mevin Shabli Koach HaHargasha. Once a person understands, he thinks about this, he learns about this, and he understands that Bli Koach HaHargasha, that without this feeling, without having a Hargasha of Elokus, Ev Shel Hagia L'Chaye Emes, it's impossible to reach, to be able to live a life that Be'emes is a Chaye Emes. Doesn't mean that Chas v'Shalom, that the mitzvahs are not, that person's mitzvahs and his learning of Chas v'Chalila are not important and not valuable, and so on. But the Chaye Emes, the tachlis of our being here, this person hasn't lived to the tachlis of being here. V'yev shel hashlam is avoda, and that's not the shleimus of avoda. So when a person thinks about this and he works on this, then misayir loy ratzon liskos l'zeh. The beginning is, after thinking about it and learning about it, the beginning is to have a ratzon, to want this. Misayir loy ratzon liskos l'zeh begins to have a ratzon, to want this. Ushoev u'mishtakik l'zeh be'emes. And he has this longing to be able to have a longing, to be able to have a hargasha, a feeling. How the Elef, you know that so many times it happens that the guy and a girl, they're going out and it's going very, very well, and everything makes sense. It's a good family, good hashkafas, everything makes sense. And one of them is ready to go under the chuppah. This happens all the time. One of them is all excited and ready to go, but the other one is like, everything is good, and everything makes sense. And it should be time to make a chasna. But that person doesn't feel a connection, doesn't feel anything. So there might be somebody who would say, that's okay, the feelings will come later. Sometimes it happens, but more often it's a misery and divorce, or if not divorce, then just a loveless life. But the longing to be able to have a feeling, and the frustration at not feeling that, is something which, if you've ever spoken to a guy or a girl, a chas and a kala, or if you've ever felt this yourself, and you've been in that situation where it seemed like it was right, and you were doing everything that you could do, and it should be right, and you're following all the instructions, in other words, you're keeping Torah mitzvahs. The only thing that's missing is that hargasha. The only thing that's missing is the hargasha. So you have you have 23 books of Tanakh. There's only one sefer that you're missing. Which sefer is that? Shir Shir. So you have all 23 books of Tanakh. From Bereshis until Divrei Yomim, you have all the books of Tanakh, Shoftim and Shmuel and Malachim, everything. You have all the books of Tanakh. Shir Shir is the only thing. So imagine the chassan telling the kala, I'd like to marry you and get engaged. The only thing I should tell you is that what's missing is Shir Shir. It's the only thing is I don't feel at all any Shir Shir. I can offer you all the other books of Tanakh, Torah Shebechsav, Torah Shebal Peh, everything except Shir Shir. So again, there's a conversation. So does it mean that you have to be sugar crazy? The same thing here. It just doesn't mean that you're in a place where you feel like we're going to talk about the madregas, where you can't think about anything else, where you're in love with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Okay, there are madregas, but for a person to live an entire life in a relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu without Shir Shir is not the tachlis. And you can find all kinds of explanations and religious ones, and you can hear all kinds of shiurim that this is not, but this. But to have the rutzon, so any person in this situation where it's going great with a girl, and everything stims 100%, except he doesn't feel anything, so he very badly wants to feel something, because his seichel is telling him that this is the right thing. His seichel is telling him that this is true. This is good, but he doesn't feel anything. So he wants to feel. That's an important thing. Just using as a muscle. To have a sheaf and a shteikikus to want this feeling. Kizek klagod. Sheshum madrega lo neftaches l'adam. It's a klal. It's a very basic principle. Yisod. That when it comes to madregas in Yiddishkeit and Avodas Hashem, lo neftaches l'adam imenu mishteiker kelei karoi. It's not going to open up inside of you. This next madrega, it's not going to open up unless you want it. That's just how it is. It's not going to happen unless you want it. So if you want very, very badly to accomplish something in learning, and then, as we'll see, it's barnus and tefillah and so on, so then there's a strong likelihood that it'll happen. But without wanting it very much, it's not going to really develop. If you don't want it, karoi really, in a real way. ובשביל השתיקק בלב אמס, צריך להבין היטב את גודל החשיבות שבזה. Then you have another type of a person, again using the marshal of Shir Shir, you have another kind of a person, which I've met many of these over the years too, that they don't really want to get married. They might be going out and they might be speaking to Shadchanim or whatever, find other ways of, or going on a date or something, but the emes is that if you talk to this person for a while, you come to the realization that he doesn't really want to, because he doesn't really see the urgency of the importance and significance of getting married, and sometimes that's behind the problem that the other person, the girl, might be having with this guy, or vice versa. That there's really not the hishtaikus to get married. There's a fear of getting married and so on. So b'chlal hishtaikus. Now, when there's really a hishtaikus, then there's a lot of davening. When you recognize the cheshivas of something, and you recognize how important this is in your life, then you daven. You daven for it. B'chlal hishtaikus la'asok harbe b'tfilas u'bakashas. A lot of tfilas, a lot of bakashas. Shehem ha'poschim es haderech lepnimis. Because the path to opening up that inner world of a person is tfilas and bakashas, davening. That's the path that opens up that inner world of a person to get beyond the chitzonius. Good to have someone's base. And you have to speak openly to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, not just to say capital Tehillim, which is great, but to speak about it very clearly. I want to get close to you. And to love you. To be dovek to you. I want to live this emunah that I have, the belief that I have in you. I want to live this b'chush. I want to feel this. I want to be b'chush, I should experience this. As on a psachla, please open up for me this place. Mamish l'schan l'fnei bari. Mamish to daven to Hashem. Kol echad b'sofer shel each person with his own words and his own language. Psachli avi. Psachli avi. Open up for me, my Father. Kadesh ezkel hargish oischa tamid. I should be able to feel you all the time. This is something that's on the lips of an Oved Hashem. Ki im yargish is a nogelo ad etzem achayim. Because if you really feel that this is something that your life depends on, when it's something that you recognize as being the tachlis of your life, and your life depends on this, for sure we'll daven a lot for it. And it might even bring you to bechiyas, to crying, because it's something that's so important to you, it's something you want so badly. Back inside, the last line, 2 lines. Because tefillah is the practical expression for ishtakus, for longing, for wanting. That's what tefillah is. Davening is when you want something very, very badly, and you don't know how you're going to get it. Davening. So, besides that davening, also through your davening, you could be zeicher to be ma'or rachmei Hashem, to awaken kivyochel Hashem's rachmim, to help you with that and to open up for you that place. Besides that it's poisches shari shamayim, that it opens up the gates of heaven. Besides that, it has this powerful koach to open up Rachmei Hashem in the person himself. It's an expression of that longing. And through davening for something, it strengthens the Hishtaikus. It goes both ways. When you have Hishtaikus, you daven. And through davening, the Hishtaikus becomes stronger and stronger. So that's Shlav Beis. So again, Aleph is just a basic recognition of the significance, of the importance of Ahava in Avodas Hashem, of Hergish, of Hargashas Ahava. Beis is once there's already something of an understanding, then to try to develop, to awaken the Hishtaikus, Tefillah, and so on. And Gimel is to go back and to think about his abundance. So once you already have a certain basic understanding, enough that you are davening for this to become stronger, then yasa hachana maisis mitzido v'kabbalas ha'or. Then there needs to be a more practical preparation to be able to receive this or this light of Hargasha, of feeling HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ka'av she'ikr hi atfila b'leiv emes. Because even though the ikr is a sincere davening, levakesh me'ito yisbarach, and to ask Hashem, she'iftach lanu es Hargasha bo, to open up this feeling for him, k'mo she'posach l'avoseinu, she'eshalchu lefanav, as he did for our ancestors and so on. Yikomakom, nevertheless, ein dai berotzen utfila levad. Wanting and davening, even though it's the most important thing, but it's not enough. One has to engage in other practical avodas. As pnimius would say, in order to show Hashem that this is something that I really, really want. And to prepare through this kelim, shebehem yizgala ha'or, through these kelim, or in these kelim, with these kelim, this or can be revealed. Hashem is noisin b'matana la'avodav hamshtakikim elu. Because Hashem, if you have a kli to receive the gift that Hashem will give to those who are longing to have this connection to Him, you have to have kelim to receive this or. Because at the end of the day, this is a gift from Hashem. It says, look in Tov Sama Gimel, Tzarech Lizkor sheha'avodah shelanu hemrak kelim l'kabbalas ha'or. That all of our preparations, all of our avodah, is to create kelim to receive this or. But in order to be zeicher for the or, it's a gift from Hashem. It's that feeling for HaKadosh Baruch Hu is itself a gift from HaKadosh Baruch Hu to be able to have that. Our job is to want, to think about, to want, and to daven for it, and to create kelim for it. But ultimately, it's Hashem who pours that into a person. But if we do what we can, then Hashem will pour into these kelim. Back on top. And what's the avodah ha'maisis? Avodah ha'maisis, his bonus. His bonus. This is really what the Sfarim of Bilvavi Mishkan Evne are focused on. This avodah of his bonus. All the Sfarim HaKadoshim, Chabad Sfarim in particular, but all the Sfarim, his bonus. There's boinin harbe begadlus of Messias Hashem Baruch. So we would tell the chassan who was looking for some shir hashirim, would tell the chassan that he needs to be misbainin in the milas of the kala. Not just I know that she's wonderful, I know she has great midas, I know she's kind, I know, but to be misbainin. His bonus is not just a passing thought, but to be misbainin. There's Bain Harbe, and again, the nimshal of that, of Shir Shirim, is Hashem. There's Bain Harbe begadlus b'mitzias Hashem is Baruch. See, the whole Shir Shirim, there's not one actual date that they go on. Right? The whole Shir Shirim, they don't actually meet. They're not able to get together. The Dod and the Raya, the prince and the princess, they're not Chas and Kala, they're not able to, it didn't work out. Almost, right? Called Dodi Doifek, Pashatis Kutanti, Echel Bashana, Yadav says that he's holding the doorknob. The whole, and then but Pashatis Kutanti, Echel Bashana, I already got ready for going to sleep. Well, I'm going to get up now, and then Kamti Luftach Ladodi. I got up to open the door for him, and Cholach, oh, he's already not here. So the whole Shir Shirim, they're not really, they're not on a date. The whole Shir Shirim is Ishtaikagos and Hisbanilus and Bakash, Bikashtiv, Lemitzasiu, and Hisbanilus, Dodi Tzach Adam. All the psukim to describe the beauty of the greatness of the beloved. The whole Shir Shirim is not actually hanging out. Not together. The whole Shir Shirim. And the minute to say that before we have already going back to Rabbi Kiva, to be Makabel Shabbos, with Shir Shirim is to be able to come with that hishtaikus and his bonus, and to make oneself into a kli, to be Makabel the Or of Shabbos, to be Makabel the Or of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the whole Shir Shirim, there's not that. These very, very, very vivid and graphic descriptions, which is why we've never taught Shir Shirim in school. And other reasons as well, but very, very graphic descriptions of the beauty of the other, and the midas and the milas. How straight his teeth are, right? I mean, they didn't have dentists back then. It was an important thing to have good teeth. But Shakula ein behem. There's not one bad tooth. It's like Kulach yafer ayasi mum ein ba. To be misboinen and of course in the Moshe, you have to be very careful. I'm talking the chas and kal, the physical stuff. We're talking about to be misboinen and the violence and the midas. There's been a highway regardless of Mitzias Hashem is born. This is a big subject. To occupy oneself in learning properly and understanding in a deep level the sugya of Yichud Hashem, of who the Chassan is, of who Hashem is. What does that mean? Shema Yisrael Shema Kenem Hashem Echad. To get to know your Chassan, to understand who your Chassan is. To understand means to be Isaac in the sugya of Yichud Hashem, to learn it very, very, very deeply. Now, as he explains in Tav Samach Dalet, he's not talking about philosophy. We're not talking about philosophy, and you'll see he has a couple of Chas Hashoms after that. Tav Samach Dalet, look how some lasik is Sifrei Hakira, and when he says Sifrei Hakira, Kiza also, which is also, I feel Sifrei Hakira says Chabru Al Yidei Gedol Yisrael. He's talking about even the holy philosophers to learn. Even he's talking about learning Moreh Nevuchim and other writings of tzaddikim and kedoshim, who were, because of the times that they lived in and what they were fighting against, they taught in a way of hakiris, of philosophical speculation, and so that's not something that nowadays is going to help a person for the most part. There might be a few exceptions, but that not only will not help, but could oftentimes cause difficulties and confusion. Ho Rabbi Seinu, his story, when he says Rabbi Seinu, means all the Talmidei of Hashem and so on. Especially Rabbi Nachman was this five. But all the Talmidei of Hashem, Ho Rabbi Seinu, she'ein lam lasik b'hem, ein lam lasik b'hem. So there were Jews that they owned the Mar Nevuchim, but they would put like a lock on it, And it doesn't in any way take from the covet that we have and the love and the respect that we have for the Rambam and for those the Chazdai Kreskes and others, and Reb Sadia going and so on. The Malachi Hashem Mamish. They were responding to a certain need of their time. But for our time, for where we are, this form could have an opposite effect. Kikola Hakiri Hisakana Naira. There's the Indian using proofs and explanations. Der Haseich Wollen Sichli is this. Ella Kavanahi Lil Midas Pneumius Torah. What we're talking about here, of course, is learning Pneumius Torah, Kabbalah, and Chassidus. Shem Apais Chemes Hakar B'Yichud Hashem. Through learning Kabbalah and Chassidus, a person begins to know the Chassan in a very, very deep and intimate way. What does it mean, Hashem Echad? All of the Kabbalah and Chassidus is a parish on those words, Hashem, Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Often Eloki, in a way of Elokus, not Sichlius, not proofs. Often Eloki. Lopa often Shal Chakira Anoshis Chas V'Shalom. Could go on. And it doesn't have to mean to learn. If a person doesn't want to learn Chassidus, what he says, could go on B'Sefer Tanya, B'Shar Yichud V'Emunah, especially to learn Tanya, Shar Yichud V'Emunah, or B'Sefer Nefesh Chaim. To learn Nefesh Chaim, if you don't want to learn Chassidus Sefer, you sit on Nefesh Chaim. Which anybody that's learned both Tanya and Nefesh Chaim knows that 80% plus of Tanya and Nefesh Chaim are very, very similar. So we Nefesh Chaim. You want to learn the Kisvei HaGra? You want to learn the Gra's Ksavim, Kabbalah? It's fine. But not Sifrei Hakir, not philosophy and proofs and so on. That's not going to do it. The same way it wouldn't work with the guy and the girl, the philosophical speculation. Here are 10 proofs why I'm the person you should marry. So sometimes the dating coach tries that, or a concerned parent will write up a list of, here you go, Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, here you have, and all kinds of sichlius of why this is the girl for you. And you look at the list, and it doesn't help me feel anything. I don't feel anything, or it's not. I can't move forward with this, even though the coach or the parent or the therapist has come up with a fantastic proof. Fantastic proof. Sometimes somebody will say, or some well-intentioned friend will say, you're not gonna get anybody else. That's one of the most powerful proofs of all. Like the great philosopher, it's a friend of mine that was a friend of all of ours, actually, Rabbi Yeshua Kurland. It was just his wife's Leah's yard site. There was a Suda the other night. I was there, so Rabbi Yeshua said that Rabbi Yeshua, he's funny, Rabbi Yeshua. So it was such a sad but beautiful night. But Rabbi Yeshua said that one of the guys from Yeshiva came up to tell him that he was a chassan. And Yeshua said, I went on telling him that, all that this girl, I said that you should know that I want to tell you that your Kala, she's an unbelievable Balas chassan. So the boy says, oh, you know my Kala? So he says, so Yeshua says, no, I don't know your Kala, but if she's marrying you, she must be a big Balas chassan. I never met her, I don't know who she is. But she's got to be a big Balas chassan. So that's like one of the great proofs. You're never going to marry anybody else. You just, who would marry you? So that's like one of the things, like number one on the list. This is your last chance, last stop. They'll tell this to a 20-year-old girl, you know that. One of her friends, one of her engaged friends who's 19 will tell her 20-year-old friend, look, I took the jump. You better do it because this guy, if he's willing to marry you, you should marry him. Because he's got a lot going for him. Like what? He's willing to marry you. He wants to marry you. He's got a lot going for him. And then there are other great deep philosophical proofs of why you should marry this person. So that doesn't do it. Chakira. Again, you have to know that the Rishonim are Isaac in these things a lot. Even the Tzemach Tzedek wrote a sefer that's called Sefer Chakira. That's very different. But the Tzemach Tzedek has a sefer, but the Chassidim don't learn it. There are some that do, the ones who have more philosophical bent. But there's a sefer called Sefer Chakira from Tzemach Tzedek. You don't see it on the tables in the Bissa Medrash so much. But there is such a sefer. I mean, the Chabad, of course, when Chabad had a very strong, the Rebbe was a very strong natia to these things. And he was such a person. But Davke Chabad is the world headquarters of this Avodah Pnimius, of Yichud Hashem. To learn Shar Yichud V'Munah, strong, to get to know Hashem, understand. But not in the way of Sichlius, getting to know in the way of intimacy, of Pnimius. That's what the Svarim are about, of intimacy, of Pnimius. So that's what it means. Last week, Havanas Hasugi back on top. Lisbon Harbi, the second column. Lisbon Harbi, Gadlus of Metzias Hashem Zvorach. V'gam last week, Havanas Hasugi Shal Yichud Hashem, the Sugi of Yichud Hashem. Yeah.
Isn't true longing the Kli? Doesn't that create the Kli to receive the Or? The way I'm reading this is that in Beis, Shav Beis, he begins by saying the Mechaber is talking about it's a desire to feel something, and then Gimel seems to be Hidbanus to really create what he's calling this Pnimius Ratzon, to really create a Kli that I really, really know, and now I really, really want to have that connection.
You're right.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what it is. That's why we might have thought that the first stage is hakara, is recognition, and then there's ishtakus, and after that there's davening and feeling. That's what else could I do? I'm doing whatever I can to make it clear. What he's saying is that the initial hakara is generally more superficial. It's just enough to generate a certain kind of an interest or excitement or a wanting. But now that I am davening, now that I do feel more ishtakus, then I have to spend more time. It's a process that I go back and to go now deeper into his boinus and this inning of the chassan of Yichud Hashem. And then it's a cycle, and then there's more shtakus and so on.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
I don't understand the constant comparison between a man and a woman and Hashem. Of course, some of them. But most of the time, Hashem is perfect. Hashem is there forever. Hashem is flawless. It's your whole life. With people, that wonderful feeling you have in the beginning
David,
goes away.
David, I know, but you're talking about how do you understand the marshal. For that, you have to go to a marriage counselor. We're talking about what I'm saying is, I understand your question.
Somebody that have an amazing relationship with
But
God.
when we're talking about
how they have relationships with people.
But in this marshal, I'm only using the marshal to talk about the nimshal. It's like if I would say a marshal of artificial intelligence to understand this and that. So then, are we going to have a conversation about artificial intelligence? It's only a marshal. I'm not talking.
I don't know how it fits so well because
it doesn't.
Hashem is perfect.
It can't.
People are not.
It can't. That's why it's only a marshal. Because there's no perfect marriage. There's no perfect people.
That's what I mean.
So that's why I'm not talking about the Indian of it being a perfect mashal. There's no perfect mashal of Hashem. Lohim shiluch harav chazyanis. You can't have a perfect. That's what I'm saying. If you want to know what a perfect marriage is, you talk to some marriage expert. I don't know. That's not the point. The point is the nimshal. You understand? There's the mashal. That's only a mashal. A mashal means it's a, how do you say, a parable, I guess. I don't know what the word is. Huh?
Parable.
That's the official word. But a mashal means you try to find some sort of, there's something where you can use it. The mashal is only being used as a way to enter into that world. But it doesn't mean that there's a marriage in this world that's like that. It's not. It's not.
Metro Golden Mayer says it is.
I'm sorry?
Metro Golden Mayer says it is.
Oh, in the movies and the make-believe, yeah. But in the real world, it's not. But it's only a marshal. That's what I thought. I'm just saying that. I didn't mean to say. Just we're not getting hung up on the marshal. They're not discussing the marshal. Just the marshal's a make-believe marshal. There's no real marshal of perfection in this world. But it's the closest we can get to using a marshal for ahava. That's why the Rambam uses this as well. The Rambam uses the Nilchus Tshuva, the marshal of the love between a chas and a kal. He uses shir. And then when you see that in the Rambam, you take a step back and you go, wow, I didn't know this is like a Maimonidean thing. The Rambam uses that as a marshal as well. Why did the Rambam use it? Because the Rambam also said shir. The Rambam lived in that world of Ahavas and Fekas Hashem. We can't be masking the Rambam what that was. So the Rambam also uses it. But we all understand that it's just the best that we can. You see, in Tanakh, there's one book. As we've been saying, there's one book. Oh, you weren't here for that, I don't think. But there's one book that's just about this relationship of love. And it uses, and that's Shir Hashirim, and it uses the love between a man and a woman. Yes, that's the best we can do. You want to talk about your best friend? So use that as a marshal. But the best marshal that we have is a chas nakala. So to ask a kasha, well, what can a marriage really be like that? That's not the point. The point is, it can be like that with a Kadosh Baruch Hu. But it can't be like that with a human being because of the imperfections that we have. And even our love for Kadosh Baruch Hu is imperfect, but it's a marshal. That's all.
To place it within the realm of human comprehension.
Yeah, but you
And that's why when it's the closest thing, and not only that, it's something that and even the simplest person wants. Even the simplest person wants to have this kind of a loving, romantic relationship. Even the simplest person, again, not everybody, there's some people that are not, but a healthy, average, normal person wants to have that. So, when you want to use a marshal in Tanakh, besides all this farm, but to use a marshal for ahava, and that you should be able to have a sense that this is something that this is good, and it's something that I would like to have. The place to go to is this ahava of Shir Hashem. It's just that's the normal place to go shopping for the marshal, but it's a marshal. And we never get lost in talking about the marshal because it's only a marshal. And all mishalim are imperfect. They're not perfect. There's no such thing as a marshal that's perfect. They're just ways of trying to make it. That's what a marshal. The purpose of a marshal is to try to make something. Like Moshe said, to bring it into the Dal Amos of your comprehension. That should be part of bring it into your way of thinking. So,
I'm just saying, infallible versus value. A godly relationship is perfect from your whole life, and you work on it. People, it's so fallible.
No, but I think we all understand what you're saying, though.
Okay.
It's not.
You could have such a deep relationship with Hashem, independent relationship with people.
Of course, this doesn't depend upon this. Could be a single person that never got married. Also, is supposed to feel Havas Hashem. It doesn't depend on that. It's a marshal thread.
I know.
That's all. That's what a marshal.
I don't know if it's the best marshal.
What?
Well, you have to use a lot of mashalim. You use Iman Abba.
I'm saying that God thought this is the best marshal, so you might disagree.
You're saying God.
Yes.
Thought it was the best marshal.
Yeah, that's why we have Shir. No,
It was a machlokas whether they were going to put that in.
that was machlokas between people, but God wanted it in, and that's why he was very. That's why Rabbi Kiva, when he said it was Kodesh Kadoshim, it's the holiest of holies. And we've spoken a lot about that. Why is it Kodesh Kadosh? because it's just like Rav Kook explains that just like Kodesh Kodashim is a physical place in the world, it's a geographic location. It's on the map, Kodesh Kodashim, and from that physical place, one can go to Shemayim. One can connect to something which is not physical at all, something which transcends all that's physical. So too, human love is a physical thing that from there a person can transcend, can reach a love that's transcendent, which is the love of God. It's like Kodesh Kodesh, like Rabbi Akiva said, that all Kisvei Kodesh, everything is Kodesh, but Shir Shim is Kodesh Kodesh. Because that is the marshal that Hashem has chosen. Because not only that Hashem has chosen, Hashem has well created this whole inyan of human love to facilitate that love between us and Him. Why did Hashem make such a thing? It's not just, it's a marshal. It's a marshal that Hashem created as a way to bring us closer to Him. The same way that they have money to explain, like the Radbaz writes, for instance, that the Radbaz writes, that Hashem made the world in such a way we have parents and children. He could have done it differently. It could be that Hashem creates each person. So Hashem made it in such a way that there should be parents and children, and that in order that there should be a mitzvah of kibbud avayim. And the whole mitzvah of kibbud avayim is in order that a person should be able to develop a healthy heritage of Yiras Shamayim, of appreciating the HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So let's go away from the marshal of Shir Shim, Chas and Kala, and the marshal of the relationship with the parents and children.
I think that's a little better. I think there's.
This is not rating. This is not.
I understand, but I'm just saying.
This is not the internet. So
powerful.
you take whatever it is. I'm explaining that the Radbaz explains that why did Hashem create parents and children is in order to be mechabed Him, so to speak, in order to be able to have a sense of Yiras Shamayim. That through that relationship of revering one's parents, of honoring one's parents, and appreciating one's parents, and thinking about what my mother did for me, what my father does for me, and so on, my mother does for me, and through thinking about this, and being this blind into this, and so on, that a person is able to use this as a mahalach, as a means of coming closer to that heritage of what? Of Kavod Shamayim, of Yiras Shamayim, Yiras Hashem, of Yiras Hashem. So of course there are many, but the point here, the chiddush here is that these relationships, Hashem created the world and gave us these kinds of relationships as a means of coming closer to Him. They were created for that. This is so. They're not only are they mishalom, but there are practical steps towards. So they're not just concepts. These are practical things that through the love that a person has for a wife, for a friend, for a brother, for a sister, and so on, to come to Ahavas Hashem. Through the respect that one has for parents, and for one's rebellion and one's tzaddikim and so on, through that a person comes to respect HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Because we're human beings, and as human beings, our way to cross over the abyss between the finite and the infinite is by taking steps in the world that is finite. And human love is a step towards the love for something which transcends that which is finite. It's a step towards. So that's why HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to have healthy relationships with our parents, with our spouses, with our friends, with our kids. He wants us to have healthy relationships, not just because that's a tachlis within itself, but because when you have a healthy relationship with a father, the marshal, you can have a healthy relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But if you grew up with a father who chas v'chalila is not there, or is, God forbid, horrible, it's very, very challenging for that person to have a healthy relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Same thing when it comes to a spouse. And that kind of a love between a husband and a wife. It affects, it's not only emotional, it affects one's ability and capacity to be a kli for Ahavas Hashem. It affects it. It's not just a concept or a thought. So all of these relationships that we have in life are not an end into themselves. It's all ways of developing our connection to Kodesh Baruch Hu, of opening up our hearts, of opening up our minds. And therefore the tachlis of this whole person who, God forbid, if a person's in a certain matzav and his chas v'chalil, his wife dies, so for him to say something to the effect of, now I have no purpose in my life, would be shocking to us, right? This is my whole life. It would be a shocking thing for a Jew to say such a thing. We would all forgive the person for saying that in the moment of pain and so on, but afterwards he'll gather himself together, and it's not the whole purpose of your life. It's, what are you talking about? Now you might have lost yourself for a moment, but get yourself together, and this is not the purpose of your life. Or if you have, God forbid, a person who's never zeich to be married. Or you could have a woman that wasn't zeich to have children, and she says, I have no reason to go on living. All of these relationships are not the end. They're means towards something higher. Not to say that they don't have deep purpose within themselves. Of course they do. But it's not the tachlis. For a person to say, if God forbid someone's wife dies, to say, I have no reason to go on living, bury me too. So, that's not Jewish. That's just off. Again, I'm not talking about judging this person, it's terrible. But that's not Chalila, a person loses someone in life that you love. It's terrible, it's sad, you say Kaddish, and you move on. Because that's not the tachlis of life. All of this is just a passing.
Some
parasha.
muscles work better than others, is that
What's
what
that?
you're saying? Some muscles or situations work better than others for different people in
Sure.
different times in life.
Yeah, sure. Okay, let's talk about that.